Well, good evening to you all. I'm John Trinterud, K9 ONR. I'm based in Walnut Creek, California, which is in the greater San Francisco Bay Area. And the title tonight is the Illustrated CERT, but really what this is about is trying to figure out how to get us out of the analog and the paper world and 5 words at a time and I spell and all of those type of things. So we are leveraging amateur radio. Winlink and QGIS are the new game in town here as we transition. And if you're not familiar with CERT or not familiar really with how their communications work, they are essentially one hop and stop. And by that I mean they report one level up under ICS, usually to an emergency operations center. They don't go farther. So their customer is usually an EOC. So let's show you a little bit about where we started this and why we started it. And let's see if I can there we go. This is Walnut Creek CERT. Now this is probably 25, 30 miles due east of San Francisco. This is largely a suburb bedroom community type thing, with a lot of extra manufacturing and things of that nature. We're a transport hub. The Bay Area Rapid Transit comes right through Walnut Creek, and it's at the intersection of 2 major highways, 24 and 680. So there's a fair amount going on. We have 7 command post locations. We call them command posts. This is basically, think of a rally point, or where there is a cache where there are supplies and radios for the roving search and rescue teams and so forth. Now, the city decided that they couldn't stand to have a cache in the middle of a city park downtown, so they moved one of the caches to this La Riu area and co-located it with another one. So there were actually 2 command posts in a garden plot. And the problem is, when they did that, they removed all the communications from the area their teams were supposed to rove to, because there's a 600-foot mountain between the 2 locations. So we had to adapt our communications. Our EOC is downtown, and it's in a deep hole radio-wise. And the police firing range out here in the way far east of Walnut Creek is the emergency EOC, because it has standby power and it's in a secure location. Now, the other thing we had to do was have a couple of extra repeaters in order to carry communications around the area. There is an analog UHF repeater sort of at the intersection of the highway. It's on BART property. And that's a big tall monopole with we have 1 antenna on that tower. And the other thing we had to do was create crossband analog repeaters at both the firing range and this combined command post, because the search and rescue teams couldn't get their messages to the EOC with their 5-watt handy talkies, largely due to our terrain. So there's a lot of analog infrastructure here, but that doesn't really help us with digital. So we had to figure out, okay, what can we do with digital if we were to make this switch over from paper 213s, dictating, a scribe and an operator at each end. You guys know the drill. So a little bit of history about CERT. We have 8 command posts, as I mentioned. These are actually patterned after the old school districts. So the names Buena Vista Civic Park and so forth. Roughly 82,000 people, 27 square miles. The unique thing is we have 130 licensed amateur radio operators. And that was because we'd figured out we couldn't use FRS in that wide an area. And GMRS, the entire spectrum, is taken up by our neighbors to the west, including repeaters and everything else. There wasn't room for us to compete with the other CERT organizations. So we went straight to amateur radio. So the EOC is a little bit unique. We report to the city. We are not sponsored by the fire department or the police department. We're actually sponsored by the city. So what they wanted from us, unlike what typically CERT thinks they're to do, is they want CERT to be eyes and ears. They want rapid citywide ground truth, situational awareness, whatever buzzwords you want to use. They want life-threatening incidents reported as we find them and characterize them as emergency precedents. They want to see major infrastructure reported as you find them, and that's priority. The rationale is right now there's no life in danger, but if we don't do anything, there obviously could be. And then everything else, ironically, including victims, which CERT's supposed to be able to treat, is reported as routine. Now, if a victim needs life support and or an ambulance, automatically that moves up to a life-threatening emergency report. We also then use extensive ham communications to talk between the command posts and the EOC and also our search and rescue teams. So that's what the city asked us to do, and that's very different than CERT telling the city what they think they might need to hear. This actually took about 4 years to fasten them down as to what they actually wanted to see and the order that they wanted to see it. I would encourage you all to go through that process if you haven't already. So our challenges are this. They said, fine, if you want to go digital, good. You have to operate infrastructure free. No cell service, no internet, no commercial power. That we can figure out. We got solar in the field and so forth. But then we got to the city. They will not let us connect to their internal networks, no internet service, no email on their servers, no HF, but then remember, we only go one level up to the EOC, so we actually don't need HF. So everything is ICS, one hop and stop. The field survey teams call the command posts. The command posts call the EOC. Doesn't go any further. The EOC actually uses web EOC and satellite phones to reach the county OAS. And there is actually no ham radio presence at the OAS. There's no active RACES or ARES organization in Contra Costa County at this time, which is an interesting factoid. And then finally, like any good CERT organization, we don't have any money. So everything is done by donations and or grants. The advantage here was Winlink and QGIS are free. And that was a huge advantage to getting this project kicked off. Now, everyone faces this puzzle piece situation. Starting at the top left, everyone is trying to do data acquisition in the field, ground truth, whatever you wish to call it, and then transferring it to the first step up, which in our case is the command post. So that's displaying local filtering, mapping within their area of responsibility. They need to know what's going on in their world. Then they want to send those filtered results to the served agency, which in our case is the EOC, and then we have to have some way of displaying it once it gets there. What we don't want to do is send raw data from the field directly to the EOC with no filters. This is what's currently being done with paper. And so when the EOC asks us, where are we hurt? Our forces used to hand them a stack of paper and saying, here's all the messages we received, which may not be a helpful method. It really wasn't. So we're trying to get a lot smarter about how we do this. But this puzzle piece this is familiar to all of you because you all do it if you're an MCOM. So let's look at each one of those steps in detail. How do we get information from the field and how do we transfer it to the command post? How do they filter and map it so they know what's going on within Buena Vista, as an example? And then how do we report it to the EOC? And how do we display it once it gets there? So the concept of GPS is an awful lot easier, and we now have 3 different ways of doing this. So for us Android users, we have a Winlink on Android, on an Android cell or an Android tablet. You have the Radio Mail app, which was designed for an iPhone, can also be used on the iPad and the Mac. but it isn't really quite optimized for the larger screens. Or you can use a Windows device if you put a GPS dongle on it, and then you can use RMS Express. Windows does not have a native GPS capability. You can mix and match, which is wonderful. You have folks that only want to use their cell phones. Fine, let's put the right app on it. You can use it. And we then developed GPS-enabled Winlink templates for that purpose. And I'll show you those. Now, the trick here is you're going to save your messages in your outbox, which you do anyway. Emergency precedent messages, can you send? In our case, they wanted them sent analog and manual if they were truly life-threatening issues. Your situation may be different. Lower precedence messages are normally held for bulk transfer. So what we created was a simple wireless access point in each command post. It's actually standard 2.4 gig, part 15 frequencies. So your teams drive up like they were going to a coffee shop, connect to the wireless server, and dump all of their messages in one bulk transfer. They don't need to involve comms. They don't need to write the messages down. And they don't need to do a comms log because it's done for them. So this is a huge reduction in labor. And we'll show you how it works. This is the template that we created from the existing paper version that we use today. This is the CERT windshield survey. A couple of things of importance. You can mark the precedence of the message. Automatic date, time, and message number for the audit trail. From and to, your CERT team ID, SAR1, SAR2, your command post name. You can put in a street name, but you also have GPS. If you don't want to stand in the middle of the fire to report the issue, so you can say the fire is a block away from my current location. The 911 notification was somewhat of a controversial approach because CERT doesn't normally call 911. This is a situation where the report is larger than your individual incident. If someone called 911, in our case in Walnut Creek, we don't have ambulances and fire trucks because those are a county agency. If you call 911 with a medical issue, they transfer you to Contra Costa Fire, which is a county agency, and you go through the whole reporting process all over again. They are the ones that dispatch fire trucks and ambulances. So all of these incidents you see down here, major fire, gas leaks, and things like this, these are all truthfully situations beyond CERT. But what the city asked us to identify were life-threatening incidents, and those certainly qualify. So what you can do is simply mark, I either called 911, or worse yet, I called them and I didn't get a response. If that's the case, they may have a much larger problem than you're aware of from a SAR team member's perspective. And if you don't know, simply mark it unknown. And as you mark these yes, this little counter increments, and you will see how that's used later. So this is life-threatening incidents. The bottom of the form, same format, but these are major infrastructure. If we don't do anything in like this major vehicle accident in 680, Highway 680, we are going to end up with life-threatening incidents. These are the kind of things that the city has asked us to report on. So that's a windshield survey. We also made some minor changes to this standard ICS 213. A couple of problems we had with this is we didn't have a way of putting on a message number without manually adding it. And it didn't have any message precedence as to how important it was unless you write it in. And if you're not consistent with the words you use, it's really hard to map this by computer. It's also hard to do it manually because you end up having to sort through and read every single message to try to figure out what's wrong and how important it is. So what we did with the 213 was we added a message number. This is my tactical call sign. and we added message priority. So at least we could identify and map and filter, show me all the 213s that are emergency. So these are very minor changes. The templates were actually written by the Winlink development team, which is a huge help. Greg Kruckowitz was the author of these templates. And this one is interesting. This is a status report that we created. We use a paper version now. This is intended to be sent at the end of one of the operational periods, like every 2 hours. Tell me what's changed since the last report I turned in. So, how many red victims do I still have in the field? How many yellows, walking wounded? How many black or fatalities, if any? How many red victims? So these would be numbers that you could fill in. If you found any more damage, how many people are mobilized, et cetera, et cetera. But you can filter and map this, which gets really interesting. How many command posts have at least one victim still in the field that needs to be evacuated? Or how many people down here in the percent of the area surveyed? How many are above 30% at this point in time? There's all sorts of work management things you can do with this that are beyond what you and I would do as a communicator, but they're incredibly valuable to the folks who have to make decisions and move people around. So this is an EOC status report. Now those 3 templates are available to you if you want to play and see how they work. This is how you get them from winlink.org. On the very first page, there are HTML and forms not available in the standard library. So they're specialized forms. You just follow the links for CERT, and here they are. The general message 213, the EOC status, and the windshield survey that I showed you. And there are full installation instructions with those templates. You don't install them under the standard library because the next automatic update would overwrite them for you, but you put them in your global folders, and that way everyone has access to them. So they're available to you. You're welcome to play with them and try them out. They're all GPS enabled at this point. The other huge benefit to this, doing this on Winlink, is you can do an ICS 309 by pushing 2 buttons, and you get a complete list of every single message sent or received by an individual call sign. If it is a CC, you will see both places that it went to. You'll see what they sent, its priority, the date and the time, the call sign of the person sending it, and the message number. And that's huge compared to doing this by hand, as we all know from the scribes who were trying to keep up with us operators. So an ICS 309 is completely automated under this system. Now, this is where we got kind of clever. If you think about how we transfer this information that we're gathering from the field units, in every command post, there's a laptop that runs Winlink Express. And if you were running Winlink, you'd be expecting to go somewhere out to a convenient RMS gateway and then on to CMS. But if you remember, Walnut Creek said we couldn't use internet. We don't have any internet access in any CERT command area. Okay, so we're strictly radio only in a closed loop or closed system. But our messages only go one level up. They go to the city and they stop. So I don't need to ride the internet to get all the way out to the internet and then all the way back to Walnut Creek. I can simply send it by radio direct to Walnut Creek. So the question is, I got all these people that have collected this data, and how am I going to get it into the command post? Because here's all these people have driven up and they've got messages to send. So what we did is we put a copy of RMS relay at each command post, just a piece of software serving as a post office. And we added a very inexpensive, literally a $32 wireless access point. And it acts as a wireless server, which means your people can pull up in the parking lot, and from a range of roughly 100 feet, connect to that as you would connect to the wireless at a coffee shop and send all of their messages into RMS relay. They don't need to involve comms. They don't need to write down the message logs, as you saw, because the 309 is automatic. Stuff all your messages into RMS, go on out and continue your route. When it drops off, RMS relay automatically uploads all those messages into Winlink Express without you having to do anything. And if you send enough messages, there's an automatic time delay on the transfer. It can be as often as every 2 minutes that thing will poll saying, do you have anything in RMS relay that I need to know about? So you can automatically map at that point. It's done without you even having to read the emails. The mapping is done for you. So let's show you how this system is put together. Remember, it's a standalone system because we cannot depend on internet access, and we only go one level up. So our world is 8 command posts, 7 locations, as I saw. Public Works is the maintenance operating center. It's in a horrific radio hole down by the freeway, and they actually have no access to fiber or internet from that location. So we put a Winlink radio at Public Works, and they're part of our system. The main and alternate EOC sites have standby power, and the system administrators and the liaison and so forth, if they're mobile, they're just using mobile service. So we put a Windows laptop, a Dell laptop, and Winlink Express, sound card, a radio, and an antenna. We use Master Communications DRA50 external sound cards. And in the field, we managed to get Alinco DR135 dedicated 2-meter radios. These were extremely inexpensive at the time. They're now out of production, sadly, but they're a wonderful radio for Winlink. And a flexible J-pole was all we needed. Now to power this, remembering we don't have commercial power, we put in a Blue Eddy solar system to keep the laptop running and to keep the laptop charged and to run the radio. And we only had to do that for the command posts because everybody else had standby power. So that's what's in the field. At City Hall, we have an existing radio room, and I say that with a smile because it's one shelf of a 5-drawer file cabinet in a conference room. And that's the radio room. So what we have there is a mini PC, a B-Link, that runs RMS packet and RMS relay. And it has a sound card and a Kenwood TMV71 and a rooftop antenna. Now, what's interesting is the radio room's on the 2nd floor of the City Hall building. The EOC's in a second building next to it on the 3rd floor. So we have to figure out how to get there, and I'll show you that network. So the EOC is actually on a LAN, an Ethernet LAN that's private to CERT. Everybody else connects over radio. 2-meter, 20 to 30 watts, and we use VARA wide. So we have solar and battery power in the field, diesel at City Hall. No repeaters, no HF, simply simplex VHF. Don't have access to the internet, so we don't have access to CMS, but all of our messages go one level up. So the field equipment, we wrote an RDAC grant for under $20,000 to put together primarily this network outside. And the Walnut Creek CIO, who was so intrigued at what we were doing, went out and bought us the laptop and any extra equipment we needed at City Hall. And he's a fellow ham. Now, we didn't even spend all of the money that we asked RDAC for. And the one caution I will give all of you, you probably already know, is don't put a inkjet printer in a cache for a year and expect it to work when you need it for an activation. We finally talked the field out of having printers in the field. And that was a very difficult decision because they wanted to print all of their messages, even though they're saved in 2 locations electronically. So we don't have the power to run a laser. We didn't have the budget to run a laser, but an inkjet is not a solution in an unheated and unventilated cache. Okay, this is what the gateway looks like in the radio room. Kenwood TMV71 is here. The sound card is right here. And this little mini PC has 16 gig of memory and a 500 gig SSD. This one we deliberately chose because it auto boots. If they lose power when they transfer from commercial to diesel, this will automatically come back up, restart Windows, and then restart the gateway without us having to drive in and manually reset it. So the other thing we did was we use an HDMI dummy plug to fool Windows into thinking it has a monitor attached because it needs one. And we use a wired USB keyboard and mouse when we're on site and an HDMI display. But other than that, this thing has run for 6 years and has not failed yet. And I said that carefully and quietly. It has not failed yet. This is the internal wiring. I told you that the radio room's on the 2nd floor, the EOC is on the 3rd floor. So coming off the LAN jack of the middle mini computer, the B-Link, it's simply a LAN tied together with 2 switches. And the CIO told us we couldn't put switches on his city hall networks. He wouldn't allow it. And then he grinned. He said, "But you're not on my network, so you can use them." And he put us on protected power, which is really nice. So basically, you can plug in at a jack in the EOC and you have full Winlink access in the EOC. Now, the filtering and the mapping is probably the heart of this whole thing. And this is what the windshield surveys and the mapping and filtering functions of Winlink will enable you to do. You can color code incidents. So this is a sample windshield survey that I did from my house. And what you get is all the information that's filled out on that windshield survey form. You have latitude, longitude, all of the message numbers and everything else, date, time, precedence, message number, CERT team, command post, the address, and then what is wrong and so forth. And you can map this and you can assign colors based on message precedence, like emergencies are red, priorities are green or blue rather, and so forth. And all of this is infinitely adjustable. So now we have to figure out how to send these messages to the served agencies. So you can collect individual incidents, or a whole collection of incidents can be filtered, mapped, and forwarded. All of our command posts have a 2-meter radio, which means they can make a connection, bar FM, directly to the EOC computer and display it on the screen. Now, if you have the old arrangement where we have CERT areas or races in the parking lot, you're now having to transfer or print messages and then sneakernet in, and that's not much of a change from analog. You also can't filter or show any of these fancy tools if you're still carrying paper messages in. But you can air gap and completely isolate a Winlink station from the IT infrastructure. Also, if they allow you to, you can connect an HDMI interface and actually display CERT incidents real time as they come in on their main display screens. And we have other things we can do for export as well that we'll show you. So if the EOC has a login, you can actually send messages directly to them. So this is incident display. What can we do? You saw the air-gapped little Ethernet network that I created. So if each area has a command post view and all 8 areas send it in to the EOC, they have a citywide view of everything that's going on in the city based on the criteria that they requested. And all we did was address the message properly. And that's a wonderful benefit. Now, if they have ArcGIS, you can do a CSV extract of all of that data coming into Winlink Express. And if they're willing to watch a comma separated value list, a text list, they can display incidents in real time. And if they won't let you connect to ArcGIS, you can use QGIS, which is free. And it's a full-blown GIS system. And we'll give you complete instructions on how to do that as well. Not tonight. So I have layer files and everything else that will help you get all of this CERT information into a GIS system. So let's look at these capabilities. This actually came from the first advanced Winlink mapping class that we held all across Hawaii. And so all of a sudden, you have, courtesy of the students in the class, you have what amounts to at least a 2-island view, which is really approaching a statewide view. The red dots in this view are emergency precedents. The yellows are priority, and the whites are where they added both emergency and priority on the same message, which you generally wouldn't do in an analog world. And so we had to have quite a discussion about, just because the form lets you do it, don't do it. Pick one. So let's look at how these work. The received message windshield survey messages are automatically added to a pool of messages. It's based on the template name. So all windshield surveys end up in a pool. You can filter everything on one of those windshield survey templates, whether it be arithmetic, true, false, or text. You can assign colors and you can map them. Now I'll show you how simple this really truly is. If you remember that windshield survey, you had yes and no questions. If you answer any of these for life-threatening as a yes, this little counter increments. So I said I had a hazmat or a chemical spill, and I get a 1 in here because it means I marked 1 in here in this list. Well, that's easy. If the count of life-threatening incidents is greater than 0, turn the pin red. I don't have to have a separate filter for each of these 6 items. I can simply use the counter. This was an idea from the Greg Kruckowit had to really simplify this whole thing. So if you look at a section of the island here, you notice that we have some issues right in the middle here in Fern Acres. Now you can standardize your filter sets and your colors to where everybody reports emergencies as red, but it would be obvious. And again, red pins are emergencies, yellows are priority, and the whites are where they goofed and marked it both emergency and priority. And all you have to do is click on the pins and you get full message details for that particular incident. You can send this directly to an EOC. Now, before we leave this particular one, we are used to having hurricanes and earthquakes. Hawaii has something else called Madame Pele, because that's Kilauea right there. And this is not all that far from Kilauea. So let's look at Fern Acres. And you can hear, you're zooming right down to street level. You have the address of the incident is 111733 Menpachi Street. And you have complete details of what's going on, dates, times, the call sign of the CERT team member that sent it in, their CERT team number, what command post they belong to, and complete details of what's going on. So this is a wonderful tool compared to trying to figure out how to do this manually. So you can automatically map incidents by precise GPS. You can color code them by the precedence, whatever you choose, as long as you standardize it. And you don't need internet or cell service to do it. The only caution I'm going to give you is if you get to where you think you need to be at street level zoom to identify an incident, which I don't think you really do, you need to get a specific level cached, which is an easy thing to do, and the class will run you through that. Once you download that view, it's cached, you no longer need the internet to do it. But this is a communications vehicle. QGIS or ArcGIS may be a better choice. The big thing for us is every Winlink message has automatic traceability from sender to recipient. Positive proof of delivery to their inbox. Doesn't say they read it, doesn't say they'll do anything, but you got the message there. And it appears in that automated 309 communication log. And compared to doing the comms log manually, that's a huge one right there. And you can display anything, including text comments within fields. As an example, if you had an issue where ambulances were being delayed, you can look for those two words, ambulance or delay. Show only those incidents where there are issues getting emergency response and send that to the EOC. And what's called live links. And I want to show you what live links look like. This is a ham radio exercise done a number of years ago in the Portland, Oregon area. And they had 90 reports that came in. Now, I'm not making any effort to filter here. It's simply, if I click on a pin, I get a complete display. In this case, the sender was N7LF, and he was in Ames, Oregon, and sent in all sorts of information with this communication drill. Now, the real trick about this is not so much the data that's here, it's a concept. You can send one message rather than 90 pieces of paper manually. What did this particular display was one email and two attachments, 68 KB total, and I sent it in under 3 minutes on VAR wide and at VHF simplex. That is a huge key point. Instead of trying to do this manually, you're doing it with one digital message filtered to what the EOC is asked for. And the last little thing, if we want to really play with GIS, this is a stretch for me because I have no GIS background at all. So GIS is free and fully functioning. It's compatible with ArcGIS, which is not free. So we got a display of the Big Island, which I found online at this geoportal.hawaii.gov. So we can actually zoom in and plot CERT incident reports from the field directly on a street map in QGIS. Now, I will pause 1 minute for a moment of silence for those who are still trying to do iSpell in Hawaii manually. There was quite a sale on vowels over there at some point in time, I think. Now, there is one problem I noticed about this. We don't have the street addresses. And that's because they weren't in the shape files, but we found a fix for that. But this shows you what you can do. This is the Menpachi thing that we looked at a minute ago at the corner, at the intersection. So we did this by extracting a simple text file, comma separated values. The trick is it's automatically created as the emails come in. You don't have to even read the email in order to get the display to update. And the emails stay in your inbox if you still need them. The GIS system watches that file grow. When it sees a new item coming in, it automatically updates the display. So I didn't have street addresses, but we put them on the windshield survey. So we now know it's 11-1824 on McKeeheach Street, Mountain View, and there's what's wrong. So I fixed it for you. The street addresses. There are many ways to deal with this. This is simply using two fields in GIS as the label for the incident, the address and the details of what's wrong. You can take it one step further. Walt Chang in San Jose CERT is an ex-Adobe Systems computer scientist who volunteered to write a special PowerShell program to let us update individual incidents. So the original thing came in, it lights up here at 1601 Skycrest as a red incident. When the ambulance is dispatched, the icon changes and we get a new precedence and a new update time. And when finally the incident is resolved, the precedence changes to resolve and the update time hack is put in. Now note that the EOC would have to update that because CERT does not have any idea when an ambulance was dispatched. But this shows you the capability of this interface. So obviously you'd be looking for green lights on the GIS display. Now, if any of this is of interest to you, there is a complete 10 session class written that'll take you from selecting a GPS unit clear into QGIS, and then the two newest sections, 9 and 10, are the custom templates, more detail about text filtering, why we did what we did, suggested usage, things of that nature. And the newest section is something that Hawaii asked me to do that incorporates PACE, which is priority, alternate, contingency, and emergency communications planning. So this is completely available to any group who'd like to do it. It is free. You can simply contact me for the enrollment link, and I'll tell you that Hawaii is kicking off another class. And it's a little strange to map incidents in two locations, but we've already done it between New Jersey and Hawaii, which is kind of a fun class. So this will lead you through everything that we've done over the last almost 6 years, if you want to do this yourself, if it's of interest. And lastly, I need to roll the credits and show you the organizations that contributed to this. This would not have been possible without Thomas Noel from the Winlink development team. He's one of the patient souls that answers the Winlink programs group about how I lost my password and can't get into Winlink, and all the other things you see on that feed. Oliver Deli, Aries Lax in the Northeast. Greg is the template writer. Phil Sherrod is the lead programmer for Winlink. Walnut Creek CERT, Don Prosnitz, Margaret Campos, Mark Peters. City of Walnut Creek, this is our CIO, and he's a ham, got his license because he was intrigued at watching CERT work in the radio room, and is now asking his technical staff to get their licenses as well. San Jose CERT, I mentioned Walt Chang. He wrote the custom PowerShell. And we had help from our ARRL friends. Joe was the section manager for Pacific. Mike Patterson is my section manager. And I want to thank the first 16 members. Whoops. I shouldn't have done that. Let me get that back. I typed it too fast. Sorry about that. Gotta get the last two folks in. Everett Belmorris is on Maui at the EOC. John D. Good is in New Jersey, and Bill Haiti is also on Maui, and they also run the Winlink classes. And Everett and Bill are going to start up another Winlink session very shortly. And then lastly, these are the great organizations that help make this thing possible. Winlink, Amateur Radio Safety Foundation, RDAC, Walnut Creek CERT, and AR, Amateur Radio Emergency Service, ARRL. So I thank you all, and we're happy to take questions and comments and so forth. So, Dan, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Actually, you're doing a good job. Great job. I turn it back to me. Okay, I'm looking around. Let's go over to Barry first. Barry, what we got in chat? Barry, I can barely hear you. Oh. No, you're just see the mouth. I don't see no words coming through. Nothing. Nothing. Nope.
Okay, can I take Steve's questions? KI0KY.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, Steve, can you unmute Steve for me, please?
I can't. I can mute him, but I can't unmute him. There he goes.
All right, Steve. Again, simply how we go through the CERT system through the security barrier, okay? In our case, what we're doing is if they're willing to take either the HDMI interface from our computer that's in the EOC and put it on their display, that's one way. If they don't want to do that, you use that comma separated value list, the extract. It's a text file. If they're willing to allow just a text file into their GIS system, that would be the other method.
Thank you.
Is that okay and clear?
Yeah, HDMI and to the display or comma separated value.
Yeah.
File.
The comma separated value list is simply a message coming in, and each field is separated by a comma. All it is text. They
Right.
can look at it and see that there's nothing worrisome about that. That's a lot better than handing them a USB key and saying, here, will you plug that? They tend to not be willing to do that kind of thing.
Thank you.
This way they can watch over what's going into their system.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Barry.
Anyone else have?
Barry, you have audio yet? No, no Barry. Okay, do we have any hands up for questions? Been a great presentation.
I guess we scared everybody. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, this thing has been working for about 6 years now, and we have also not had CERT activated except for a couple of missing people in that time frame. So we're waiting to see what happens when the balloon goes really up to see how well this works under pressure.
You guys in California, Puerto Rico, and others are just, it's not if, it's when.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
He's got audio.
Yep.
Okay, looking for some hands up. I don't see any yet. When I say hands up, folks, down at the bottom of your Zoom thing is the thing called React heart. And you click that little up arrow thing and you can raise your hand. Because I can't see everybody at one time here.
But it tells you when they raise their hand, so you don't have to see them.
Sometimes when they just raise their hand, the Zoom will see that and raise the hand for them. It doesn't always work, but when it does, that's convenient.
Yep.
Well,
but everything looks clear now, so.
okay. Well, John, it's been a great presentation. I really appreciate you doing this. For those that don't know, John is our newest member to the RATPAC team. He's contributed a whole lot. He's a big asset to us, and we really appreciate him joining us.
Thank you, sir.
Until he called me sir, then he got nasty.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you are a little older than I am, so yeah, not much, by about a year.
Okay,
What is the saying, Dan? Don't call me sir, I work for a living.
yes.
Yeah,
yes.
thank you. Thank you. I volunteer for one.
All right, with that in mind, I'll pull the plug here, say 73s, and hopefully see you guys next week.
Thank you all for coming.
Thanks very much to you all.